bitch. You cold bitch.
Come on.
We played in the town of Elgin, Illinois. Played 58 weeks in a drive-in where the population was only 14,000 people, because you can imagine how many times they saw that movie.
You could do anything you wanted to me. What would you do?
Turn you over my knee and spank your bare butt.
What a funny policeman you are.
Russ's reputation as a maverick filmmaker had always deterred the major Hollywood studios, but the enormous success of Vixen in 1968 proved impossible to ignore. And so 20th Century Fox thought they'd give Russ the chance to make them a lot of money. They gave him an office, a car, and the chance to direct the sequel to The Valley of the Dolls, and he called it Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
The film follows the adventures of an all-girl rock group and their rather bizarre Svengali, Z-Man Barcel. Russ's first major studio production includes the first appearance of a renegade Nazi, Martin Bormann. The script was written by Roger Ebert.
Every night we go out to dinner and think up new and bizarre situations. The idea that the hero, Z-Man Barcel, was actually a woman was something that only occurred to us when we got to the scene where that was revealed. We didn't even know that earlier in the movie. We just made things up as we went along. And the movie, as a result, I think has an anarchic quality to it that a lot of Hollywood films don't have because they're so premeditated and so safe.
Z-Man? There is no Z-Man, varlet. And indeed, it is not a game we play. I am Superwoman.
Oh, my God, no. You've been a broad all along, right, Barcel? Goddamn broad! A goddamn ugly broad, Barcel! An ugly broad!
So the film made a ton of money. Everybody liked it, except the critics to begin with. And then the younger critics started getting onto it. They're beginning to see things in the film, like Rolling Stone and so forth.
It could hardly have been more successful than it was. It grossed about $45 million, which is about a $200 million picture in today's terms. It was one of the biggest hits of the year in 1969, and 1970 when it came out. The problem today is that the studio has never wanted to be associated with it since, and so it is not available in video, and it is not made available for cult showings.
But Russ was happiest making his films independently, as he did with the next one, Super Vixen. But times had changed. Films like Deep Throat in 1972 marked the collapse of censorship in American cinema. Russ, however, refused to follow the trend towards hardcore.
By making pictures that were not pornographic, he could play in ordinary movie theaters, and he could reach a wider audience.
Martin Bormann, Super Service.
So he made a definite decision to turn his back on the whole XXX porno industry and to continue to make these adult films that were aimed at mainstream audiences in real movie theaters. I was with him on the location of Super Vixens, which was shot in the deserts of Arizona and New Mexico. A good day's work on one of those pictures might involve somebody being strapped to the top of a mountain for hours while explosions went off all around her and other people raced up and down shooting at each other. These were very athletic pictures, and the people who made them often felt as if they had been on an outward bound project.
Pollock dynamite. Ain't never gonna use that stuff again.
Harry! Whatever you try fails! However you hurt us, Harry, you won't succeed! You are evil! With love! 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 Leaf and lizards!
Ah, the great outdoors, the scene of many a Russ Meyer movie, including the wonderful... starring, some say, Russ's greatest discovery.
Kitten Natividad.
And Russ's live-in lover for 5 blissful years.
For 5 years, every night.
Buenos dias. I am your Greek chorus, your cacophony of carnalities, the embodiment of...
I went all over naked, talking about the film, explaining what was happening because this film is so complicated. Nobody knew what was happening, so I had to put it together. And I would say things like, pummeling the scrotum with joyous supplication, meting out the vengeance on the colonial oppressor. Or was it connubial? Who knows? Who cares?
It's almost impossible to describe the plot of Up, but do you want to give it a shot?
I like the idea of having a female cop, undercover, as it were. I had to have the Nazi in there. Originally, I wanted it with Martin Bormann, but he refused because of the homosexual connection.
So instead, Russ cast Adolf Schwartz, who may look familiar to you.
You have no business here. Certainly not in my Badezimmer. Did I not make myself clear? Die Fische? Himmel, Piranhafische. I saw those Teufels, da war a whole colony dabei. No, no, nein, not in my tub, no. Ah! My Schwanz! Nein! Ah! My beard!
Russ watches movies all the time, and he's extremely familiar with movies. He's extremely familiar with the minutiae of movies, with particular shots, with particular camera moves. But there is no director that I can think of that has influenced Russ Meyer. He has a totally distinctive visual style. It's based upon an aversion to the moving camera. And of course, since he's often shooting on location with no crew, it would be very hard for him to lay down tracks and do a panning or a tracking shot. So he uses lots of setups instead. He probably has 4 times as many camera setups in a movie as the average director. He'll cut from here to here to here, from angle to angle to angle.
Make everything all right. And up the breeze before the morning light. Hey, bartender, please.
Pie.
Double chili, heavy mustard, but hold the onions.
And he always uses cutaways, like if somebody walks across the room, he cuts to their shoes.
Oh, this is ja wunderbar.
Or if they're inside a barn, he cuts to the barn, and the barn is shaking back and forth.
You're gonna come up here. The ghosts, they're coming.
He's always cutting to something else. During the middle of a sex scene, he'll cut to a demolition derby, for example.
Yes!
This kind of editing style, this kind of almost bold comic book montage, is totally unique with Russ. There's not another director who shoots that way.
Something else unique to Russ is his house. Every wall and most of the ceilings are covered with reminders of his colourful past. Posters of his many films, assorted props, international awards, and photographs of his friends and family.
That's my mother when she was, I believe, 19 years of age when she was taking nurse's training.
How did she respond to your films?
She thought I could do no wrong. She was my favorite lady. But she would also speak to friends of mine like Jim Ryan and say, I wish Russ would make different kinds of films. But never would she ever say that to me.
Russ is a house. This makes a pretty good museum.
Well, I like to refer to it as a shrine.
How many posters have you got?
Well, I made 23 films. I would hope I would have 23 posters at least.
You got all the foreign ones as well, I'd say.
Yeah, they're nice to have.
You really have got some stuff in it. I hear you're a very good cook, Russ.
No, maybe asparagus and broccoli and pork chop here and there and so on.
These plaques here, these all from the various movies, aren't they? Is that the hat from Mr. T's?
That's T's a skimmer, yes.
And then that's Tour's glove from Faster Pussycat.
Yeah, that's the original thing. A lot of people like to have that.
That's history in the making, I bet they would. What's that down there, the kitten plaque?
Well, it says, I love Russ, and Kitten loves Russell, and that's a very important thing to me. It has to do with 4 very bountiful, abundant years with Kitten Natividad, who's been in